Skyrush, also known as mid-rush, is very talked about in the roller coaster community, but this was also a very highly anticipated roller coaster when I visited America. What happened when I rode it? I got disappointed, and you're gonna hear all the details in this video. And I was also lucky enough to try the new Skyrush seats that they have added for the 2024 season, and yummy, they are good. The Intamin lap bars are the best in the business. But I only got to ride this roller coaster 4 times, and there was 1 time in the front and 3 times in the back row, so you know what I prefer again. And every other roller coaster enthusiast except Airtime Thrills, who I actually agree with now, are hyping this roller coaster up. They have placed this roller coaster in their top 10 also, but I can't see it, and you're gonna hear everything about it in this review. And also with emphasis on the viewer's attention span, I'm gonna make this review as short as possible if I can, but I'm gonna go in depth with the layout and the theming and what you can see of this ride, of course, man. And walking up to Skyrush, you can of course see that there's a bigger focus on thrills than theming, and that is often what you see at the American theme parks. It is a different story if you visit Europe. In Europe, our roller coasters are much smaller, but we have a bigger emphasis on theming across the parks in Europe, of course. But what they did for Skyrush for the 2024 season was very awesome. They have added a soundtrack and new lights, and these small adjustments to the theming in the station actually builds up the hype before you ride this ride. And Skyrush is of course themed to an airplane taking off, and you can actually see that in the station when the lights turn on and the arrows show that you're going to take off, and then the hype builds as you hear the sound and the engine of the plane starting, and then you go up this crazy fast lift hill. So the station's theming and sounds are a big plus for me, but that's it. And of course now I'm gonna go into an in-depth ride layout description as every other reviewer does, but I'm gonna do it different because I'm very disappointed at this ride, of course. Perhaps the only surprising thing about this ride for me was the lift hill. That's crazy fast, man. The lift hill actually goes 30 kilometers per hour, and that is 18.5 miles per hour, so that is quite fast for a lift hill. Before going down this crazy drop in the back row, let's quickly go over the ride stats. The ride stands 200 foot tall, that is 61 meters. It travels 75 miles per hour, 75 I said, and that is 121 kilometers per hour. And the ride length is 1.1 kilometers, and that is 3,600 feet. Yes, now we're ready for the review. Now we go down the crazy first drop on Skyrush, and this is actually the best element on the ride in my opinion. And the drop angle is actually 85 degrees, and that is almost vertical. And this drop is of course best experience in the back row because you're gonna get flung out of your seat because of the whole train that drags you down this drop. In the front you get flowjector airtime down the drop, and in the back you get ejector. So the back row is king. The next element is of course an awesome low to the ground airtime hill, and that is what you can see for the rest of this ride. Airtime hills and twists and turns, but this airtime hill is probably the best airtime hill on the whole ride. This airtime hill gives ejector airtime throughout the whole train. So now you're probably thinking, oh my god, he said this ride was disappointing, but oh, let me hear, the rest of this ride is pretty mid in my opinion. And then you hit a long bank turn on Skyrush, which takes you over the whole lake, which Skyrush of course rides over several times, and this actually has a lot of positive G's, but not very intense. It is not i305 intense, but moderately intense in my opinion. And then you of course hit another low to the ground airtime hill, which gives flowjector airtime throughout the whole train. It isn't as strong as the first airtime hill, of course. The first airtime hill is legendary. And then you hit another bank turn which twists to the right, and this doesn't have a lot of G-forces in it. Moving on, you hit the Stangle dive element, and the Stangle dive is best experienced in the front row. The Stangle dive element gives a bit of sideways ejector pop as you twist out of the Stangle dive, of course, and in the back row the airtime is more weak. Overall this element is quite mild in the feelings. Oh my goodness, in the forces. After the Stangle dive you hit a little floaty twist to the right, and after the little floaty twist that doesn't do anything, you take a right bank turn, and that doesn't do anything either. And after that you actually hit an S-hill, which gives flowjector airtime in the front row and also in the back row, but the back row forces are a bit weaker on this element. And the last element that actually gives some kind of airtime is of course a low to the ground airtime hill again, and this gives some floater airtime throughout the whole train. Not much, no ejector, man. And the last two ride elements of this ride is quite pointless. This is just where the ride needs to travel back to its station. Firstly, you go into an overbank turn, and you can really feel that the train is crawling through the layout right now. And after that you just dip in and dip up into the trim brakes. And after you've been slowed down by the trim brakes, you bank to the right and travel slowly into the train station. And that's the ride. And now I've made it to the exciting part of this video where I need to review and give my overall thoughts on this ride. And I'm of course just gonna give it a score from 1 to 10. What do you guys think I'll give this ride experience? Let me know in the comments, man. Leave a little prediction. I would overall describe this ride experience as overrated and lackluster, but that may seem harsh, but hold on. The first drop in the back row is of course a 10 out of 10 world-class experience, and then the next airtime hill is of course filled with ejector airtime, and that equals world-class. I think the positive G's are only intense in the first turn, and when you hit the next airtime hill, that's pretty okay, and the stangle dive is mid, and after that I've experienced better things at smaller roller coasters. For example, the stangle dive is nowhere near the intensity of Mavericks, of course, but I can see why, and the S hill is nowhere near the intensity of Piraten at Djursommerland in Denmark. There's also a lot of filler space at the end of the ride, and also at some turns in the ride that just feels, you know, forceless. Overall, the ride has 2-star moments, and then some okay/good airtime hill moments, and then the rest of the layout is quite mid/bad. And that's why I'm gonna give Skyrush a score of 8 out of 10. This roller coaster has been way too overhyped by many roller coaster enthusiasts in my opinion, so I actually agree with Airtime Thrills. This ride is overrated. And I also need to mention that the middle seats are the best way to go, because the wing seats are unbearably rough. Oh goddamn. I almost died at the right wing seat in the back row when we went down the first drop. It almost felt like there was a pothole in the bottom. And that's it for my video review. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are your thoughts? Leave a like, subscribe, support the channel if you want to, of course. If you hated me, then just yeah. Bye bye.